Marley was dead. This must be understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I am going to relate. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. But Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name, though his old partner was definitely dead. The company was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people called Scrooge Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. But he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Scrooge was a selfish old sinner. He didn't change 1 degree at Christmas. One dark Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting-house. It was biting, foggy, and cold weather, but Scrooge had a very small fire. "Merry Christmas, Uncle," said Scrooge's nephew as he came into the room. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug!" "Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that?" "If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart." "Don't be angry, Uncle," the nephew answered. "Come for a Christmas dinner with us tomorrow." "Ugh, humbug!" replied Scrooge. "Why can't we be friends?" cried Scrooge's nephew. "Oh, very well. Merry Christmas, Uncle." "Goodbye," said Scrooge. His nephew stopped to wish Merry Christmas to the clerk. "My clerk," muttered Scrooge. 15 shillings a week, and a wife and family to take care of, talking about a Merry Christmas. Humbug!" Scrooge's nephew had let 2 other people into the room. They bowed to him. "Mr. Scrooge, or Mr. Marley," said one of the gentlemen. "Mr. Marley," Scrooge replied, "has been dead 7 years ago, this very night." "Ah, then, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, "a few of us are going to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. What would you like to give?" "Nothing," said Scrooge. "They can go to the debtor's prison." "Many would rather die." "If they would rather die," said Scrooge, "they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon, gentlemen." Scrooge went back to his work. Meanwhile, the fog and the darkness and biting cold had thickened. One cold young boy stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to sing a Christmas carol, but soon, at the first sound of "God bless ye merry gentlemen," Scrooge jumped up, and the singer fled in terror, leaving the keyhole to the fog. At length the hour of shutting up arrived. Scrooge nodded to the clerk, who instantly snuffed his candle and put on his hat. "You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose," said Scrooge. The clerk observed that it was only once a year. "A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December," said Scrooge. "Be here all the earlier the next morning." Scrooge went home to his empty, gloomy house. The yard was dark and the fog thick. Now the knock on his door was very large and ordinary, but tonight it looked like Marley's face. Marley's face! The eyes were wide open, and its greyish colour made it look horrible. As Scrooge looked, it became just a knocker again. He did look carefully, but there was nothing hiding behind the door, so he said, "Humbug!" and closed it with a bang. He closed his door and double-locked it himself. He walked through his rooms to see that all was right, and sat down by the fire. "Humbug!" he repeated, and then he heard it, a clanking noise from the cellar, as if some person was dragging a heavy chain. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound. Then he heard the noise coming up the stairs, then straight towards his door. "Humbug!" said Scrooge. It came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. Marley. The chain Marley pulled was long and made of cash-boxes, keys, padlocks, and purses. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge could see the door behind him. "What do you want with me?" said Scrooge. "Who are you?" "In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley." "Humbug, I tell you! Humbug!" At this the spirit raised a frightful cry and shook its chain. Scrooge fell upon his knees. "Do you believe in me or not?" "I do," said Scrooge. "I must, but why do spirits walk the earth, and why do you come to me?" "It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad amongst his fellow men, and if that spirit does not go forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death." "You are chained," said Scrooge, trembling. "Tell me why." "I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard, and of my own free will I wore it." Scrooge trembled more and more. "Your chain was as heavy as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have made it longer since." "But you were always a good man of business, Jacob," faltered Scrooge. "Business!" cried the ghost, wringing his hands. "Mankind was my business. Kindness was my business. I am here tonight to warn you. You will be haunted by free spirits." "I think I'd rather not," said Scrooge. The spectre floated over to him. "Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night at the last stroke of 12. When it had said these words, the spectre floated out upon the bleak, dark night. The air was filled with moaning phantoms, and every one of them wore chains like Marley's. They faded away. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was still locked. He tried to say "Humbug," but he stopped and went straight to bed and fell asleep upon the instant.